sports. Let's say hi to Russ Granick, ESPN Sports labor analyst, former assistant commissioner of the NBA. Chris Broussard of ESPN.com. And also hello to Jay Adandi, who has written on ESPN.com today. Competitive balance is something that will be achieved in pro sports the day after world peace is declared. That's a lofty goal. Russ, let me start with you. We have only one comment, and it's curious from a league well-versed in PR from David Stern. He told Bloomberg earlier today, quote, the decision was taken that Chris Paul in New Orleans was more valuable than the trade that was being discussed. I don't want to speak on the basketball side, but that particular one was weighed against Chris Paul's continued presence in New Orleans, end quote. And we add, not parenthetically, that the NBA does own the Hornets. So parse that for us, if you could.
Well, Bob, I think that last part is really the central issue here, that the league does own the Hornets right now, which in effect makes David Stern operate as sort of the owner of that team. I think if this had been another team making this trade, you know, David and other people that he consults might have said, gee, we don't think it's a great deal, whatever. But I doubt very seriously that the commissioner would have disallowed it. Here, David found himself, I believe, as in a position of an owner saying to himself, you know, we own this team on behalf of all the other teams. I have to try and sell this team during the next year. And I don't think this is a good enough deal for this team. I think there's an inherent conflict in being in that position, which is why I think it's probably a good thing for the league to try and sell that team as soon as it can. And you have to ask, why did it take so long for the focus to go to David? I mean, why wasn't this trade presented to him earlier? But I think he really saw himself, and at least this is what he says, and I don't think there's any reason to, other than Mr. Gilbert's flowery prose, to you know, not to believe it, that he was trying to act as the owner of the team. I think if you have a Dwight Howard trade tomorrow morning or whatever, I don't think you're going to see the same kind of reaction on the part of the commissioner.
Issues, of course, from the Dan Gilbert email. I'll come back to you on that. But Chris, right now, where do we stand? We understand you've been saying and reporting all day that CP3, Chris Paul and his folks want to appeal this. Where does that stand?
Well, Chris and the Players Association have been talking, and they're just looking at what legal options they have. Is it better for Chris to sue the league as an individual? Is it better for the Players Association to sue the league on behalf of the players in this trade? Or, you know, they're looking at all the options, trying to figure out what the best route is to take. Now, one person close to Chris said, you know, if another player might just let this slide, but Chris Paul's personality is that of a person who's really not going to let this go down lightly. He may end up eventually never going to the Lakers, but he's certainly going to do what he can to fight this legally to see if he can be moved to the Lakers in this trade that had been proposed.
But quickly, if there is going to be a reversal, when might we see one?
Well, David Stern doesn't seem to have any intent.
It's got to go to court.
I would think it would have to go to court, or at least the pressure of it going to court would have to move the league to change its mind.
Jay, this has taken some coin out of Chris Paul's pocket. It also raises a lot of issues.
Certainly, and one of them is, what exactly do the league expect when they say basketball reasons? How much better could the Hornets do, knowing that they really don't have any leverage because everyone in the league knows that Chris Paul intends to leave, that he will not exercise the final year of his contract, so he's going to be gone as a free agent. So Dell Demps, the general manager for the Hornets, didn't have a lot of negotiating power, and I thought he actually did pretty well in this trade. Luis Scola's a guy who can get you 18 points and 8 rebounds per game. Kevin Martin's a proven 20-point scorer in this league. Lamar Odom, a 2-time champion for Los Angeles Lakers. Goran Dragic, a serviceable point guard. You can't tell me that's any worse than the Denver Nuggets did in their deal when they got when they sent Carmelo Anthony to Denver. You can't tell me that's worse than the Minnesota Timberwolves did when they sent Kevin Garnett to Boston, and now none of the players that Minnesota received in exchange for that superstar is still on the team. So, you know, the basketball reasons argument really doesn't hold up when you look at it from what the Hornets were able to obtain in this potential trade.
You know, Russ, if I had the odd $400, $800, whatever $1 million wanted by the Hornets, and I know Chris Paul's not going to stay there, David Stern's logic that maybe the franchise is more valuable with Chris there now, it only holds for the next several months.
Well, I think that's right. I don't know whether it's more valuable now or not, because it's not like some owner is going to buy the team and not realize that he's in serious jeopardy of losing him. Owners are buying teams these days are a little more sophisticated. But I think you've got to look at it from a standpoint of, all right, what do I think is the best thing I can do for this franchise? At least that's where David's focus should have been, and he says it was. You know, we can argue. I mean, J.A. can make some good arguments about why this isn't a bad deal, but then you get into a situation where it's each person's own perspective, and I think in this situation, because the league owned the team, that the commissioner is entitled to use his own perspective in a way that he probably isn't.
Russ, is it because the league owns the team or because the Lakers were the team that was getting Chris Paul? I think that's the real debate here.
The bottom line is the league's making excuses. That's all there is to it. First it was basketball reasons. Now today, you know, they come out with another statement. They did not want this. The owners, many of the owners didn't want this trade to go through.
How many, Chris?
I don't know exactly, but a significant number. Mark Cuban's one that's been on the record saying he didn't want the deal to come through. He pulled David Stern aside and talked to him about it. Several other small market owners, obviously Dan Gilbert, who wrote the letter, they didn't want it going through. Many of these owners, almost half, didn't like this collective bargaining agreement in the first place, and I'm sure they let David Stern know, look, we gave you this 50-50 deal. We wanted 47, and now you got to do something for us. That's all there is to it. These are excuses, and it sickens me. It sickens me. I got a bad taste in my mouth about the NBA right now.
I would say
Mark Cuban was also the guy that complained. Mark Cuban was the guy that complained when the Hornets made a trade last season in which they took on an additional $2 million in salary for Carl Landry. And notice the league didn't void that, even though it added to the expense of the New Orleans Hornets. There were some other owners who were upset about that. The league didn't void that deal because it didn't involve the Los Angeles Lakers.
But that's the problem when you have a league owning a team. Whatever it does or it doesn't do, it can be subject to lots of different interpretations. Now, I don't think any of us know exactly what the facts were. I don't know what conversations, other than obviously Mr. Gilbert's email, took place. If the facts were, as Chris said, you know, then I'm not sure that the action's appropriate. But are
we talking collusion,
Russ? Put it
Russ?
in the other context, and it's going to be a small victory, Chris, if that's what the commissioner was after, because there are other trades going to come down the pike, like a Dwight Howard, and you're not going to see, I don't think, the same kind of reaction. These things are going to happen. I happen to agree with J.A. that, you know, you can't, there's certain things you can't legislate. Players are going to want to go to certain markets which they find more agreeable, or to play with certain players, and especially with a salary cap where people are going to, and a max contract where people can only pay the same amount of money. That's just going to happen, and that's part of this deal or any deal I think the NBA could make.
Chris, we've got about 30 seconds. If you're going to make a short list of leagues that don't handle PR situations and minefields well, you wouldn't put the NBA on it. They usually avoid situations like this. Stern's been out there just once early this morning, and we haven't heard squat the rest of the day from anybody.
Look, I think David Stern has been the best commissioner in American professional sports. But this last year for him has been a PR nightmare. First the lockout, and now this. This is terrible. We know his legacy, his tenure as commissioner of the league is coming to an end at some point soon, and this is not a good way to go out. The league should just reverse this. It's as simple as that.
All right, Russ Granick, Chris Broussard, Jay Adande. We wait to see what happens, and so does Chris Paul. So do the Lakers and two other teams. Guys, thanks so much.